What happens when Hollywood's most respected voice meets late-night television's most controversial host? It only took 46 seconds of Bill Maher's smugness for George Clooney to reach his breaking point, leading to one of the most shocking exits in talk show history. The studio lights burned bright that Friday evening as George Clooney settled into the guest chair across from Bill Maher. The audience buzzed with excitement, expecting their usual dose of witty banter and political commentary. Little did they know, they were about to witness a verbal demolition that would leave Maher scrambling for damage control. Maher leaned back in his chair with that familiar smirk plastered across his face. His opening was typical, designed to provoke rather than welcome. "So George, I have to ask you something that's been bugging me. You Hollywood types always talk about helping people, but isn't it really just about making yourselves feel better?" Clooney's eyebrows raised slightly, but his voice remained measured. "Bill, I think that's a pretty cynical way to look at humanitarian work. When we raise millions for disaster relief or bring attention to human rights violations, real people benefit from that." The host waved his hand dismissively, already interrupting before Clooney could finish his thought. "Come on, George. You fly around in private jets preaching about climate change. You live in multiple mansions while telling regular folks to tighten their belts. Don't you think that's just a little bit hypocritical?" The audience shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the playful ribbing they expected. Maher's tone carried genuine malice, like a prosecutor going in for the kill. Clooney's jaw tightened, but he maintained his composure. "I've never told anyone to tighten their belts, Bill. What I've said is that we need systemic change, policy changes that address these issues on a global scale. And yes, I'm fortunate enough to be able to travel for work and for the causes I support, but I also put my money where my mouth is." Maher laughed, that grating sound that made viewers reach for their remotes. "Right, your money. Let's talk about that. You made what? $200 million from selling your tequila company? And now you're lecturing people about economic inequality?" The studio fell silent. Even the cameramen seemed to sense something was wrong. Clooney's eyes narrowed, his famous charm giving way to something much colder. "I'm not lecturing anyone about anything, Bill. I'm using whatever platform I have to try to make things better. What exactly is your point here?" "My point," Maher said, leaning forward with obvious satisfaction, "is that you're all talk and no substance. You show up at fancy galas, write some checks, and then pat yourselves on the back while the real problems continue to exist. You're basically performing charity for your own ego." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Clooney's hands, which had been resting calmly on the armrests, now gripped them tightly. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "You know what, Bill? I've been doing this work since before it was fashionable. I've been to refugee camps where families are drinking contaminated water. I've sat with mothers whose children died from preventable diseases. I've seen the wells we built, the schools we funded, the medical supplies we delivered. So you can sit here in your comfortable studio and make jokes all you want, but don't you dare minimize the suffering of people who actually need help." But Maher wasn't backing down. If anything, he seemed energized by Clooney's obvious frustration. "Oh, please, spare me the humanitarian speech. You think flying in for a photo op makes you some kind of saint? You're a movie star, George, not Mother Teresa." The comparison was a step too far, and everyone in the studio could feel it. Clooney's face flushed red, his legendary cool finally cracking. "A photo op? Is that what you think this is? Do you have any idea what goes into coordinating relief efforts? The logistics, the partnerships with local organizations, the follow-up work that happens long after the cameras stop rolling? Honestly?" Maher shrugged with theatrical indifference. "I think it's all about your image. Everything you Hollywood people do is about maintaining your brand. The charity work, the political speeches, even coming on shows like this, it's all calculated." Clooney stood up so abruptly that his chair rolled backward. The sudden movement caught everyone off guard. His voice was no longer controlled, no longer diplomatic. "You know what your problem is, Bill? You've become so cynical that you can't imagine anyone actually caring about something bigger than themselves. You sit behind this desk every night tearing people down because it's easier than building anything up." Maher's smirk faltered for the first time. He clearly hadn't expected this level of pushback. "Hey, I'm just asking the questions that regular people are thinking. Someone has to hold you celebrities accountable." "Accountable for what?" Clooney shot back. "For trying to help? For using whatever influence we have to shine light on problems that need attention? What exactly have you contributed lately besides snark and cynicism?" The host tried to regain control, his voice taking on a more aggressive edge. "I contribute honesty, George. I tell people what I really think instead of hiding behind some carefully crafted public image. At least I'm authentic." Clooney let out a bitter laugh. Authentic? You think being deliberately cruel is authentic? You think mocking people who are trying to make a difference is some kind of virtue? That's not honesty, Bill. That's just being a bully with a platform. The tension in the studio was suffocating. Audience members looked at each other nervously, unsure whether to laugh or run for the exits. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every moment of what was rapidly becoming a career-defining confrontation for both men. Maher's mask was slipping now, his famous wit replaced by genuine anger. You know what? Maybe I am a bully, but at least I don't pretend to be something I'm not. At least I don't wrap my ego in the flag of humanitarianism and call it noble. That was the final straw. Clooney's face went white with rage, his hands trembling with barely contained fury. The studio audience could sense something terrible was about to happen, like watching a dam about to burst. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of years of frustration with people like Maher. You want to know what's really authentic, Bill? This is authentic. You're a sad, bitter man who makes a living tearing down people who are actually trying to do good in the world. You hide behind comedy and call it truth-telling, but really, you're just another shock jock desperate for attention. Maher's face darkened. The pretense of playful debate was completely gone now. Oh, that's rich, coming from someone who literally pays publicists to manage his image. How much does your team spend, making sure you look like the perfect humanitarian? At least I have something worth protecting, Clooney fired back. What do you have? A show where you invite people on just to ambush them? A career built on being deliberately offensive? When was the last time you did anything that actually helped another human being? The host's voice rose to match Clooney's intensity. I help people think for themselves instead of falling for celebrity nonsense. I provide a reality check for people who might actually believe that millionaire actors care about their problems. Clooney stepped closer to Maher's desk, his imposing presence making the host instinctively lean back. You don't provide anything, Bill. You just poison the well. You take genuine efforts to address real problems and you turn them into punchlines. You make it harder for people to believe that anyone actually wants to help. Maybe because most of you don't, Maher snapped. Maybe because it's all just performance art designed to make you feel better about your obscene wealth while regular people suffer. The accusation hit like a physical blow. Clooney's eyes flashed with something dangerous, something that made several audience members shift nervously in their seats. You know what? I'm done with this. I came here thinking we could have an actual conversation about issues that matter. Instead, you just want to score cheap points by attacking my motives. Maher seemed to realize he had pushed too far, but his pride wouldn't let him back down. Look, George, if you can't handle a little pushback, maybe you shouldn't be putting yourself out there as some kind of moral authority. Pushback? Clooney laughed, but there was no humor in it. This isn't pushback. This is character assassination. This is you deciding that because I'm successful, I must be lying about everything I care about. This is you assuming the worst possible motives because it fits your worldview. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every moment of what was clearly spiraling out of control. Maher's producers were frantically signaling from the wings, but their host was too caught up in the moment to notice. My worldview is based on experience, Maher insisted. I've seen enough celebrities come and go to know when someone is selling something. And right now, you're selling the idea that George Clooney is some kind of saint. Clooney's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout. I never said I was a saint, Bill. I said I was trying to help. There's a difference. But apparently, in your world, trying to help makes you a target. In my world, claiming to help while living like a king makes you a hypocrite? Maher shot back. The studio fell completely silent. Even the sound technicians seemed to hold their breath. Clooney stared at Maher for what felt like an eternity, his jaw working as if he was physically restraining himself from saying something truly devastating. Finally, he spoke, his voice carrying a finality that everyone recognized. You know what the real tragedy is here, Bill? You actually had a platform that could have made a difference. You could have used this show to elevate important conversations, to bring attention to problems that need solving. Instead, you chose to use it to tear people down. You chose cynicism over hope, destruction over construction. Maher's response was defensive, almost desperate. I chose reality over fantasy. I chose honesty over public relations. No, Clooney said, shaking his head slowly. You chose easy over hard. It's easy to tear things down. It's easy to assume the worst about people. It's easy to make jokes about suffering while sitting in your comfortable chair. What's hard is actually getting your hands dirty trying to fix things. The host tried one last time to regain control of the situation. And what exactly have you fixed, George? What problems have you actually solved with all your charity work and activism? Clooney's response was immediate and devastating. I've helped build schools that are educating kids right now. I've funded medical clinics that have saved actual lives. I've brought international attention to conflicts that were being ignored. But even if I hadn't done any of that, at least I would have tried. At least I wouldn't have spent my time convincing people that trying is pointless. The words hung in the air like an indictment. Maher opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. For perhaps the first time in his career, he was genuinely speechless. The silence stretched on, becoming more uncomfortable with each passing second. Clooney watched Maher struggle to find words, and something like pity crossed his face. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, but somehow more powerful than anything that had come before. You know what the saddest part is, Bill? I actually used to respect you. I thought you were someone who asked tough questions because you genuinely wanted answers. I thought you challenged people because you wanted to make them think. But watching you tonight, I realized you just enjoy watching people squirm. Maher finally found his voice, but it came out smaller than before, less certain. I ask tough questions because someone has to. I hold celebrities accountable because the media usually won't. Accountable for what? Clooney repeated, his frustration boiling over again. For caring? For trying? For using whatever platform we have to help others? You're not holding anyone accountable, Bill. You're just being cruel for entertainment value. The host tried to recover his earlier aggression, but it felt forced now, desperate. Maybe because your version of helping is just another form of self-promotion. Maybe because real people see through the act. Clooney shook his head slowly, a look of profound disappointment replacing the anger. There's no act, Bill. There never was. I make movies. Yes, I've been lucky enough to be successful at it, but that success has given me opportunities to do other things, things that actually matter. And instead of celebrating that or even just leaving it alone, you've decided to attack it. Because it's not real, Maher insisted, but his voice lacked conviction now. None of it is real. It's all just image management. To you, maybe, Clooney replied. Because you've become so cynical that you can't imagine authenticity exists. But I've sat with refugees who had nothing left except hope. I've worked with doctors who risk their lives every day to help strangers. I've seen what real compassion looks like, and it's nothing like what you're showing here tonight. The audience was completely silent now, transfixed by what they were witnessing. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It was something rawer, more real than anything typically seen on television. Maher made one final attempt to turn the tables. So what? I'm supposed to just accept everything you say at face value? I'm supposed to pretend that celebrity charity isn't often just a tax write-off with good publicity? Clooney's response was swift and final. You're supposed to have enough decency to give people the benefit of the doubt. You're supposed to understand that even if someone's motives aren't 100% pure, helping people is still better than hurting them. You're supposed to be better than this. The words hit Maher like physical blows. His face cycled through emotions, confusion, anger, something that might have been shame. I'm just trying to keep it real here. Real? Clooney laughed bitterly. This isn't real, Bill. This is performance art. You're performing cynicism because you think it makes you look smart. You're performing cruelty because you think it makes you look honest. But all it really makes you look is small. Maher's voice became almost pleading. I'm not trying to be cruel, George. I'm just asking questions that need to be asked. No, you're not, Clooney said with absolute certainty. You're tearing down anyone who dares to try because it's easier than building anything yourself. You've convinced yourself that caring is naive, that hope is stupid, that anyone who wants to make things better must be lying. And that's just sad. The host tried one more time, his voice cracking slightly. Maybe I came on a little strong tonight, but my basic point still stands. Clooney looked at him for a long moment, and when he spoke, it was with the finality of someone who had made a decision. Your basic point is that successful people can't genuinely care about others. Your basic point is that anyone who tries to help must have ulterior motives. Your basic point is that cynicism is more honest than hope. And you know what, Bill? I fundamentally reject that worldview. He started walking toward the edge of the set, his movement sudden enough to surprise everyone. Where are you going? Maher called after him, panic creeping into his voice. Clooney turned back one last time, his voice carrying across the studio with perfect clarity. I'm leaving, Bill. I came here to have a conversation about things that matter. But you're not interested in conversation. You're interested in destruction, and I won't be part of that. You can't just walk out, Maher said, standing up from his desk for the first time. We're in the middle of a show. Your show? Clooney corrected. Your show where you ambush guests and attack their character for entertainment. Well, congratulations, Bill. You got your drama. You got your viral moment. But you lost something much more valuable. What's that? Maher asked, though he seemed afraid of the answer. Clooney's final words carried the weight of absolute moral authority. You lost the chance to actually matter. You lost the chance to use this platform for something good. And most importantly, you lost the respect of anyone who still believed that dialogue could be better than destruction. With that, George Clooney walked off the set, leaving Bill Maher standing alone behind his desk, facing a studio full of people who had just witnessed something unprecedented. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sound of Clooney's footsteps disappearing into the distance. Maher stood there for several more seconds, his mouth opening and closing wordlessly, before finally slumping back into his chair, the weight of what had just happened settling over him like a shroud.